Good evening. Welcome. I'm John. I'm a bookseller at Literati Bookstore in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan. We're so pleased to welcome Diana Kapp in support of Girls Who Green the World, 34 rebel women out to save our planet, in conversation this evening with Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha. Just a quick webinar overview for our attendees. The chat is closed this evening, but you can keep the chat window open on your Zoom. I'll be sharing links to purchase the book from Literati throughout the event. Q&A is available to you, however. Please feel free to use the Q&A whenever a question pops into your head for Diana or for Dr. Mona this evening. I'll read a selection of your questions at the conclusion of their conversation, but please don't hesitate to submit them when they come to you. And live transcription is available to you on your toolbar using the CC icon should you need closed captioning this evening. I'll also mention that in the chat. And if you're watching us later on YouTube, there are always links to purchase books in the description directly below me. And at the bottom of the view screen here, you'll also see a little floating typewriter that says subscribe under it. You can click on that and subscribe to our channel and be kept up to date with all of our At Home with Literati events once they become available there. And as a reminder, you can shop for more books at literatibookstore.com to have shipped to your home anywhere in the United States. And if you live in Southeast Michigan or the Ann Arbor area, of course, our doors are open to the public for in-store shopping. But most of all, we would just like to thank you for your attendance this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon, or much later this evening, depending on when and where in the world you may be joining us. So without further ado, I'll introduce tonight's author and our moderator. Diana Kapp is a business journalist with an MBA from Stanford University who has written about education and entrepreneurship for most of the major media outlets. She is the author of Girls Who Run the World. You can find her online at dianakapp.com. Speaking with her this evening, Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha is the founder and director of the Michigan State University and Hurley Children's Hospital Pediatric Public Health Initiative, an innovative and model public health program in Flint, Michigan. A pediatrician, scientist, activist, and author, Dr. Hanna-Attisha has testified 4 times before the United States Congress and was awarded the Freedom of Expression Courage Award by PEN America. She was named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world for her role in uncovering the Flint water crisis and leading recovery efforts, and most recently received the 2020 CDC Foundation's Prize for Improving Health. Please join me in welcoming Diana Kapp and Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha into your living rooms.
Thank you, John, for having us. We so appreciate Literati's support. And I'm really excited to be here tonight with Dr. Mona, as we like to call her. She is a true superhero that opens my book. And I feel like it's particularly appropriate that we have her tonight because obviously all of our minds have been on Robb Elementary and what's happening in Texas. And we really need people in our lives like Dr. Mona who are citizen activists, who stand up for what they believe in and become whistleblowers and act even when it's not easy and when there's a lot of blowback that comes with it. And that's something we all need to be doing right now. So I'm particularly excited to get to talk to you tonight.
I am so excited to be here with you, Diana. I'm so excited to be here with our friends at Literati, and yay to all those folks who are watching now and who will be watching sometime in the future. I can't wait for this conversation.
Yeah, so let's just start a little bit since you opened the book, and yours is really a story of hope, and the book is a book about hope and change makers that are actually out there doing things, even when we are facing such a steep obstacle. And I'm interested in you telling us just a little bit about your family's cultural history, because I think it has a lot to do with how you became an activist and why you feel as strongly as you do about the issues.
Oh, that's a great question, Diana. So, my activism has roots in Ann Arbor as a student, as an undergrad in the now School for Environment and sustainability. I'm missing a word there. School for Environment. Oh my God, it's going to kill me. Formerly SNRE, when I was there at school. So my activism was really kind of formed as an environmental science student that went on to do environmental health and then public health and medicine. But even before that, like as you mentioned, my activism has roots in my family history, which kind of resonated with several of the other women that you featured who, were immigrants or came from backgrounds, that where there was, struggles and challenges and they were leaving somewhere bad and coming somewhere better, which is kind of every immigrant story.
Mhm.
My parents came from Iraq. We came here when I was 4. I was born in Sheffield, England, which was totally like, my father was going to school there. We weren't supposed to stay there. We were going to go back to Baghdad, Iraq, where my family was from. My brother, who's just a year older, was born in Baghdad. But it was the late 1970s and Saddam Hussein was rising in power. And you guys probably remember him, right? Remember that terrible dictator, Saddam Hussein. And my parents kind of saw firsthand the rise of authoritarianism, dictatorship, oppression, and knew that they couldn't go back home. And that's how we ended up in Michigan, embedded in my upbringing was this everyday, counting my blessings that I was in this country because I had first cousins undergoing air raids and shelters and dads off to war after endless war. So grateful to be here, counted my blessings, but also acutely aware of what powerful people can do to vulnerable populations. That was never shielded from me. So my parents instilled in me through this kind of immigrant story that no matter where you are, what you do, you have a role to play to make the world better, and that you're blessed to be here and to be educated and, to have a voice and to have all these freedoms and to use all of those skills in no matter what community you may end up to once again do the hard things for the right reasons. So that immigrant story, that family history kind of rooted in social justice really kind of is the milieu that created my activism that was then later kind of formed and developed as I went on to become a student and then at Michigan and then a medical student later on.
We're 2 University of Michigan grads that you have here tonight. I come from a long line of University of Michigan graduates, but so something that's really interesting to me and what makes your story kind of a story about environmental justice is that this statistic that a baby born in Flint, Michigan is likely to live almost 20 years fewer than a baby born elsewhere in the same county. And why is that? Tell us a little bit about how did this place, which I understand at one time had the highest per capita income in America as sort of the seat of GM and the car industry, and then has gone on to become kind of emblematic of our deepest racial issues leading to kind of environmental injustice.
So I, by serendipity, have my Auto World mug with me. So this was like the amusement park that was created in Flint, and it was opened like for a minute. But you're right. So General Motors, the auto industry, was born in Flint. And like you said, Flint was not always kind of synonymous with disaster and crisis and all these injustices. Flint used to be a place of prosperity, almost like this promised land where like immigrants came for living wage jobs and healthcare and housing and benefits, and but also African Americans in the Great Migration North coming to places like Detroit and Chicago and Flint for a chance at opportunity and equality. So, and it wasn't even that long ago, and it makes me scratch my head. Like in the 1980s, Flint had the highest per capita income of any other city in the country. Like 1980s is not that long ago. Like to go from the richest city in our nation where people made the most money to literally the poorest city right now of our size. So what happened in Flint is a story that's not unique to Flint, which is why I think it's such an important story to share. It's a story of greed. It's a story of neglect. It's a story of racism. It's a story of an industry abandoning its birthplace, of disinvestment, of white flight, of systemic and structural inequities that starved the city, that segregated the city, that made it near bankrupt. And then we were like taken over by emergency managers, which is like a whole other story we could talk about for an hour, where we lost our democracy, which is also not something that's unique to Flint, where we're corroding democracy. So, this is a story common in so many of our post-industrial Rust Belt cities, but really common in every city where we have failed to protect children. And I'm going to come back to what you said earlier today, Diana. And the shooting is obviously close to everybody's heart. And we had a shooting in Michigan not too long ago, a school shooting. But we as a nation fail to take care of kids. We put kids on a pedestal. And we tell them they're amazing and they're their future, but the environmental regulations, the public health protections, the investment in education, the ability for parents to provide for them. We don't do what we need to do to keep them healthy and safe, be it lead in their water or lead in their bodies from being shot. We continuously fail to protect children. And that's so much of what Flint Story is about, is kind of neglecting a city, neglecting its people, which are predominantly majority minority, ultimately poisoning a city, through the auspices of austerity to save money. And then, that's kind of the whole crisis part. But Diana, as you shared, the Flint Story and why it's so amazing to be featured. You guys have to buy this book. Like, the pictures are amazing. This is the best ever picture
I love your picture.
has made of me. It is amazing. The illustrations are incredible, but the story and the reason you included it in here is because it's not a story just of crisis, but it is a story of everyday people, doctors and students and scientists and moms and activists and pastors and journalists and water scientists that all came together and said, no, like, this is not okay. This is not what we want for our kids, and fought back. And as such, this story is really a playbook of resistance and a playbook of hope. And I'm so blessed to be included in this book, where every single one of these stories is about making the impossible possible, and about, bringing hope by so many literally girl boss folks.
Let's remind people just to quickly, that don't know your story, like remind them what happened in 2015 in Flint. You're in the backyard with an old childhood friend who happened to be working at the EPA. You were a pediatrician working in a public health clinic. And the water system had just changed from drawing water from Lake Huron, and now it was going to save money and draw water from the Flint River. And tell us what your friend alerted you to. And I'm curious to know how it was that was known at the EPA.
Yeah. So my story is about a girlfriend. So there's so many girl heroes in the story, so many girl protagonists. We were both high school environmental activists. We helped shut down an incinerator together in high school, and we were both really kind of moved by those early activism experiences in high school. And she went on to do environmental engineering, and I went on to do environmental studies at Michigan. And she went on to become a drinking water expert and worked at the EPA and worked in DC, and had just moved back to Michigan and to be with her family and raise children and see her parents and what have you. And she came over last minute to my house for a barbecue. And she's like, Mona, I heard about, Flint changes water. I'm like, yeah, Flint changes water, but everybody in charge is saying everything is okay. And she's like, I just saw a memo from a former colleague that I worked with at the EPA, and I trust him. And he in this memo, he is, saying that Flint's not, the water's not being treated properly with something called corrosion control, which I'm like, I don't know what corrosion control is. I didn't learn about that in medical school. And she said, without corrosion control, there's going to be lead in the water. And that is the moment that my life changed. Like I can
Mhm.
tell you the date, the time, where I was in my kitchen, holding a glass of wine, kids running around, screaming, shouting, mommy. And when she told me that there was possibly lead in our drinking water in Flint. And as a pediatrician, as a public health trained person, we know what lead does. It's a poison. It's an environmental injustice. 30 years ago, my professor at University of Michigan, Bunyan Bryant, one of the fathers of the field of environmental justice, taught me that lead was a form of environmental racism. And it was our kids in Flint, like I said earlier, were already poisoned by so many injustices that even before the water crisis made it hard to grow up and be healthy, where a kid literally, like you said, in one census tract in Flint has a 20-year difference life expectancy between another kid in another part of our county. But by this, because of the situation, the environment, the histories and the hierarchies that have manifested, as if their lives didn't matter as much as other lives because of poverty and systemic racism and housing inequality and lack of nutrition, like all of these things that we in medicine and health call social determinants of health, play a huge role in the health of our patients. So we already had these tremendous disparities that made it hard for kids to just be kids and be healthy. And then on top of that, lead was potentially in the water. So I freaked out because I respected that science. I knew what lead does. And I stopped sleeping. I stopped, eating. I lived on coffee, which I still do. Very bad habit. So good. It was driven to find out what was happening to our children. And I knew I had to do something. We talked about kind of my upbringing. I was raised to not close my eyes to injustices. That's what drew me to pediatrics and to working in places like Detroit and Flint, to try to, as a physician, not just to put Band-Aids on my kids, but to try to address these upstream issues that make my kids sick. I was getting blocked by so many forces who didn't want me to ask questions, folks who wanted to keep their eyes closed and didn't want to see what was happening. And for me, it was impossible not to see and impossible not to act. So did the research and saw that, yes, more lead was in the blood of our children, and publicly exposed that. And like everybody else who had raised their hand and said something was wrong in Flint, I was dismissed and attacked. The state said I was an unfortunate researcher, that I was causing near hysteria, which is also sexist.
You were slicing and dicing your data.
Slicing, dicing. So I think, like so many of the women you featured, like, there's ups and downs to this work. And that was probably my lowest point. And I began to second guess myself. I think a lot of women go through this imposter syndrome, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have spoken up. Maybe my science was wrong. I felt defeated. I felt tiny. I'm like, who am I? I'm just one person, right? A woman who's like barely 5 foot tall, brown immigrant woman going against the most powerful forces in the state and the country. They were all saying I was wrong. And fortunately, and very quickly, there was this realization that, like, hey, this isn't about me. This has nothing to do with me. They can go after me all they want. This is about something bigger. This was about my kids. And my kids in Flint are no different than my kids. And I think that gets to this crux, like, why don't we all take care of kids, all kids, as if they were our own kids?
Why do we say that this could never have happened in Ann Arbor? Like, what is it that would have stopped it in a place like Ann Arbor? Or is it that people would just have been looking more carefully before making a decision to change the water? Why wouldn't it have happened in a different place?
Oh, there's so many reasons. Ann Arbor never would have been at a point of being near bankrupt and under emergency management. It's the demographics of the population, the affluence, the wealth, the political clout. That's why this story is such an emblematic example of environmental injustice because of the demographics that were impacted. Racism absolutely played a role. And, it's been called out in many investigations from the Michigan Civil Rights Commission and others that call out once again, the demographics, the poor, predominantly people of color that were impacted, which was why kind of why the issue happened in the first place, being in this near bankrupt state with a loss of a tax base, being taken over by the state. The Michiganders on this call will remember maybe that, at one point in Michigan, half our African-American population was under emergency management in cities all over our state compared to just 2% of our white population. That never would have happened in places like Ann Arbor or Grosse Pointe or Bloomfield.
And you've said, I've read in some things that, like where you've written op-eds and you've said, I really want to be remembered not for what happened, but for what I did about it. And I'm curious sort of what is happening now in terms of, I've read about a registry that you have going, that 8,000 kids were impacted, and what has to happen now in order to address the issues caused by this unfortunate 2 years of exposure.
Yeah, that's how I get to spend my every day is making sure that the kids of Flint have the brightest future possible, and making sure that other Flints don't happen. So, Flint is this amazing place where people literally roll up their sleeves and get to work on what's next. And I am, blessed to work with an amazing kind of community of parents and kids. We work really closely with Flint kids to put into place the interventions and the resources to support everybody who was exposed. It wasn't just the kids, the whole population was exposed. A lot of this is done through our CDC supported Flint registry, which is identifying folks who were around during the water crisis and getting them connected to resources like early literacy programs and school health services and trauma-informed care and, ongoing like home inspections and lead pipe replacements and all these really important things to improve their health and development. I sometimes, I wish I could prescribe something that could like take away like the exposure, to take away the crisis. And that doesn't exist, but what we have been able to put into place is kind of a model of recovery. Like, this is what you do when bad things happen to a community, and this is what other communities can do too. So it's been pretty phenomenal, and what we have been able to put in place. Our work is long term. We hope to continue this work for decades. But I think the most exciting thing about Flint is the ripple effects that we've been able to spread across the nation. And I'm just going to I'll share two quick ones. The first is about nutrition. So, healthy nutrition is so important for all children, for brains to develop, for kids to grow up healthy. It's also really important for lead exposure to kind of limit lead that's exposed, because lead can mimic calcium and get stuck in your bones forever. So long story. So nutrition is like a forever medicine for the people of Flint and for all children. My pediatric clinic is on the second floor of a farmer's market. And we moved to the farmer's market because I would be telling my patients, like, who'd come in, oh, you need to eat healthier. You need to eat like avocados and kale. And I can't wait to talk about avocados later because it's one of the stories. And they would just like stare at me. They're like, where am I going to get that? And how am I going to afford that? So our institution made the environmental move to co-locate in a farmer's market. And everybody that comes in gets a nutrition prescription for fruits and veggies that they fill at the farmer's market. And it has a $15 value.
Wow.
And so it's amazing. It is so cool. We've changed the demographic of our farmer's market. And I work with academics, public health nutritionists who've been researching this. And it's been shown to increase now food security and behavior and education and BMI, all these amazing things that we've now published. And our amazing girl boss, U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow, has been to our clinic. She co-sponsored the U.S. Farm Bill. And because of our nutrition prescription program in our little clinic in Flint, she included it in the US Farm Bill, a national nutrition prescription program. And it passed and it was signed by the president. And now there is a $25 million nutrition prescription program that's part of the USDA because of our little program in Flint. So just it's awesome. Just like one example of an idea that we put into place that isn't just about Flint kids, but really about kids everywhere.
And there was something in Biden's bill, is that right? In the infrastructure bill that is explicitly focused on lead infrastructure. Is that right?
Yes. So, this, I get so emotional. So I've had this amazing privilege of testifying several times before Congress, and I have my props with me because I recently, about a month ago, was my last congressional testimony where it was virtual, and this is a lead pipe. You can't take lead pipes to Congress, but I could do it virtually, and I got to show. I got to show our policymakers what a lead pipe looks like and how it's kind of like a straw, right? And like how millions of kids across this country are drinking water from a straw made of 100% poison. Like there is no safe level of lead, and this is delivering the drinking water of millions of children. And because of our advocacy since the water crisis, we were able to include in the Infrastructure Act, because it passed and was signed, the replacement of our nation's lead pipes, which is, and people have been trying to do this for decades. We never should have had them in the ground. We should have taken them out of the ground a long time ago. But now the dollars are finally there to replace not all of the lead pipes, but it's the largest federal investment in lead and water elimination ever.
Wow. That's done and happening. And what is it, like a 10-year plan or what?
Yeah. So we're hoping it's a 10-year plan. It took a while to put the pipes in the ground. It's going to take a while to take them out. And there's a lot of kind of policies and things that are happening at the EPA to determine how to do that. There's a lot of push to make sure equity is at the forefront, that we prioritize disadvantaged communities, in the removal of these lead pipes. So the money is, I think, coming to the states, and then that's being determined. It's a problem everywhere, but it's a bigger problem in the Midwest and the Northeast. Chicago actually has the most lead lines in the entire country. So big older cities and kind of that part of the country, but huge development, which is going to provide living wage union jobs where, families can support their children, and, work towards, healthier families to come.
That is exciting. That is progress. Is lead paint remain a huge issue, or is that kind of something we've?
No, it's a huge issue. It's underneath layers of paint. There's often, lead paint, and in our soil, especially next to roads, there's remnants of lead and gasoline. So even though we've restricted the use of lead, we're not putting it in as much stuff as we are now. We continue to live with its legacy. And the percentage of, there's less kids who are exposed to lead as they were 30-ish years ago when we had especially a lot of lead and gasoline. But at the same time, we've learned that there's no safe level of lead, and the burden of exposure is not equal. It continues to be kids who are poor and kids of color who are burdened by this. All right, Diana, there's so many, but we need to talk about other people. Once again, you need to look at all my tabs here. You need to get this book because, I just before this call, I went back and read through some of these women, and they are amazing and inspiring. And we have to talk about more of them. And I think the first folks that I want to talk about, and because we would be remiss if we didn't, because this is an Ann Arbor event, is Janice Newsom and Nana Britton. I hope I'm saying her name right. They were U of M students. One was in the School of Natural Resources as well. And they were roommates at a conference. It sounds like a scientific conference in Seattle. And they were both kind of two Black women with beautiful braids. And they were both, it sounds like, kind of lamenting or, about like itchy braids and how uncomfortable their braids were. And that they needed better solutions to the hair braids. And they thought maybe that was because of the plastics that were part of hair braids. So tell us their story. I love their story so much.
Well, first, it's kind of cool because both of them were into conservation from a very young age, and they credit it to, programs that they were part of in their cities that took them out to, spend time in putting their hands in the dirt in botanical gardens. And, things like that actually really matter. Like summer's coming up right now, and I'm hearing about some of the kinds of things kids are doing. And it's exciting because for some people, they do really impact. And so for these two, it led them to pursue biology and conservation and plant biology. And they were at this conference and they were assigned roommates, and it was kind of like their pillow talk. They were like, we should have been talking about, something about plants, but instead we were talking about how much our heads burned. And they figured out they were both in PhD programs. They went back to Ann Arbor and they had this kind of brainstorm about what else could we make hair extensions, which would you believe is a $2 billion market, which is because Black women often want to manage their hair in a way that they like the way it looks and it's easy to handle and they can keep it in for a long time. And so they put them in these different box braids and cornrows. And what they had heard about was other kinds of fibers, like even from banana peels and sugar cane and things like that, that had been used as alternatives to plastic. And so what they thought of was a weed which grows all around Ann Arbor called phragmite. And it's destroying property values around Ann Arbor because it grows so wildly.
Yeah.
And so they literally went out with their big shears and they cut some down, and they had some friends with
their shears. It's so good.
They had friends in the material science department who helped them, break the fibers down. And now they have their first bundles of these braids coming out in the end of 2022. So they're really interesting. They've won all kinds of business competitions, like the University of Michigan had a pitch competition, and then they've gone on to, pretty much every one they've entered, they've come away with a prize, which is, they said, has just been a great way of giving them sort of a boost of confidence to keep going, especially because it's an idea that, it's a new idea. So I think people are skeptical, but that's where a lot of good ideas come from.
Oh, I love their story so much. I cannot wait to see what they do. I think it's going to be a hit. It's going to be
the company is called Lillian Augusta, and that is Janice Newson's grandmother's name, and she wears her hair in braids, and she did Janice's braids as a girl, so that's why they credit her and name the business after her.
I love it. I love she talks about her grandma in the book, and how her grandma also came, I think, into Chicago as part of that great migration north, but was resilient and strong and persevered. And that's why they named it after her. It's beautiful, beautiful story. So that's one of my favorite stories. And then we also mentioned avocados earlier, which is what I like to prescribe to my patients. And I was blown aback by the appeal story. Where is that one? So this is Jenny Dew, who creates jackets for vegetables and fruit. I didn't even know this was a problem, but evidently the world throws away so much produce because of
guess how much? Do you know what percent of produce we throw away, if you had to guess?
20-something%, I think I read.
We throw away 40% of our food, not just produce, but all food. And Jenny was going to a graduate program in what's called the Salad Bowl of America, which is Southern California around San Diego. And they were just looking out at all these amazing fields of lettuces and tomatoes and crops and thinking, my God, a third of this rots. And it happens all along the chain. Like some of it happens in the field and some of it happens when it's en route to the grocery store. And something like a third of avocados that get to the grocery store get thrown away before they even be sold. And then another 25% get thrown away once they make it to your kitchen. So they started thinking about what is nature's protectant, and that is the peel. So they went out to the grocery store and they bought a whole carton full of grapes, tomatoes, cucumbers, mangoes, things that have a substantial peel. And they boiled it down to its molecular parts and they created this kind of wash. And the avocados was the first, and they last now 4 times as long as a typical avocado. And then they've moved on to strawberries and citrus and asparagus. And I'll tell you, my daughter's school, she's 16, and they decided for Earth Day, they had a barbecue and it was kind of themed around the book. So they had Impossible Burgers, and then they had Ugly Pickles, which is in the book, and they had avocados, and they had these chips that are made out of food waste. But the avocados, they arrived, it was a week before they could use them. And my daughter said that every single avocado was absolutely perfect. Wow. So they use them for their barbecue, and they really, it extends the life. So it's pretty cool. If you go on the website for Appeal Sciences, they're sold in places like Costco and Kroger. So it's not just like fancy specialty markets. They're in mainstream markets. You can find out where they're sold, and you can also watch these films that are time-lapse photography that while you watch over 30 days, what happens on the left to these bananas that have a peel and these bananas on the right that don't. So I
was gonna read that time-lapse paragraph. It's so good. The little time-lapse films revealed a miracle. By day 4, the Appeal avocados remained vibrant green, while the non-treated ones had started darkening. By day 9, Appeal avocados looked as spiffy as day 4, while the naked cados were ready for Botox. By day 20, the uncoated fruits looked burnt and shriveled, while the Appeal avocados were ready to top toast. That's amazing. It's so cool. And talk about what they're doing with the plastic wrap on the English cucumbers. I have some of those in my fridge. I feel so bad.
I know. So they're getting rid of that. Those cucumbers, I've never understood why they need to, it's like a condom. That's what she said. Like, why are you packaging the cucumbers in a condom? But it's all that plastic because it needs that extra coating to not rot. So they're doing away with that. So that's pretty cool. And I mean, there's other fruits and vegetables wrapped in, I've gone in markets where they wrap apples in plastic.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I mean, like every one of these stories started with a question, curiosity and ingenuity, and like, experimenting and, going down to the science and making mistakes and trying new things and being persistent. And I love these stories. You mentioned plastic. Plastic is a big part of this book. I want to talk about what I think was the youngest person in this book, Shelby O'Neill, the 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And what she did with straws. And I'm going to read a quote from her. I love this quote. So I guess she was I don't know, she was somewhere and she saw like a cup full of straws. You'll probably explain it better. And she said, I saw all these tiny stir sticks, hundreds of them. Straws are wrecking our ocean ecosystems, and no one knew or cared, she recalled. I was basically having a full-blown breakdown. I love that. So tell us what she's been able to do.
But what she did is kind of like what you did. She sounded the alarm. So she went home. She'd been at this tire distributor with her dad where he was getting new tires for his truck. She lives in like a farm community in south of San Francisco. And she found out who is the distributor for this tire distributor that is giving them their like cafe and snacks. and it was called Farmer Brothers. So she Googled around and she found the CEO of Farmer Brothers. She figured out his email. She wrote to him cold and she just said, "Hi, I'm Shelby O'Neill. I had a flip out in your, in the tire manufacturer where you just delivered all those plastic straws. Do you have any idea what you're doing to the oceans with those, and that you're killing turtles and fish? And we're all literally, it's raining down microplastic right now. They've just did a study in 11 United States national parks where they measure the rainwater, and it is full of plastic in every one of the 11 parks. So it's, it's in the oceans, it's evaporating
all of our bodies.
It's all in our bodies. They're finding it when you test people's blood. Sure. But so what I think is cool about her is she just did this. She was a girl. She was in high school and she did this cold emailing. And so after she writes to this head of Farmer Brothers, she picks up her cell phone one day and he's like, "Hi, this is Mike Cowan, the CEO of Farmer Brothers. And you know what you wrote to me actually really rocked me. Come talk with me. I want to hear more about this." And, he had just come back from a diving trip and he was sensitive to the issue. And he ended up, changing the stir sticks to be bamboo. And then she got really empowered by, the success she had. So she went on and, she got to meet with Howard Schultz at Starbucks, and she met with the sustainability team at Delta Airlines and Alaska Airlines and Dignity Health. And she got Dignity Health, which is a huge healthcare company that has, dozens of hospitals, to give up half of the straws in every one of their hospitals. So 50% less. They continue to use them for the patients who kind of lying in bed and still need them, but no more in the cafes or in like the little stations that are for visitors. So one thing I love that she said is, whenever you go and meet with someone like Howard Schultz, you have to leave your parents in the lobby, because it's never good if they're there with you. The power comes from being there like alone as a teenager. That's what's so impactful, which I thought was really cool. But I'm actually getting her right now to send me those actual emails, because I'm doing a workshop next week with a bunch of teen girls called The Power of the Pen. And I want to show them the actual letters that she sent out that she had so much success with.
Oh, and that's what I love about this book. You share the stories, but then you also give these tips on what you can do. There's a whole section on here about writing an op-ed. And how to write an op-ed and where you can go to get help writing an op-ed. I love the practical, like all these stories are all playbooks, but I think in addition, interspersed are all these like practical tips of like what you can do when you talk about, for example, fast fashion and the clothing industry, like, and these are things that you can do: host a swap meet or go thrifting or what have you. I think that's what also makes this book really special.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the number one question I get when I'm talking with the young people in schools is, what can I do? I want to do something. Yep. They're really fired up to get active. And I think it's just intimidating to know what to do. So one of the things that I've done is on my website and on my Instagram, which is at Girls Who Books, I have a link to this sheet of like over 200 ideas for things that teenagers can actually do. And I give you things like a sample of a letter that you could send to a company to complain to them about all their over plastic packaging, or this
what to tweet when you see over packaging. Like you even have like tweet suggestions. Like if you see,
"Hey Pepsi, what are you doing? Killing our beaches,"
Yeah. It's great. That is awesome. So there's one, we're going back to the straws. There's one fact in here that blew my mind. So it says in the US, 500 million straws are used every day. Oh my gosh. The lineup would wrap the equator 2.5 times.
I know.
Every day, the amount of straws.
Well, sometimes people are are quite cynical. Like I even questioned whether to put her in the book because the straw issue catches a lot of flack for being like, if we pay too much attention to worrying about straws, we're kind of taking our eye off the ball of what actually matters. And I very much agree with that. But if you ask Shelby that question, what she will say is, I created this month called Straw Free November, and it became like a bona fide thing in the California legislature. And what I was trying to create by doing that was this kind of mindful moment where you, during that month, you were actually paying attention to like, how often am I offered this? And what would happen if I said no? And what alternative might I find for myself? And so she just felt like it is a way to ask people to like slow down and just think about this thing that they're mindlessly consuming every day, and the fact that they really don't need to be. So it's not necessarily straws per se that is going to get us out of the mess we're in. But I think it's an exercise that we can all go through in our day-to-day lives to kind of say like, you know what, I don't need that. You can just keep it because I can just drink my drink without it. And so I like her story in that way.
And even at the end of her story, she lives in an agricultural city, and she says, there are so many pesticides in use that their tap water is unsafe for drinking. Someone needs to be speaking up, if, and in quotes, if no one is doing it, then I need to do it. So this is a girl with confidence. She was able to change one thing, and now she knows that she can change and is empowered to change more things. I love that. It's so important to have that kind of self-efficacy that you can make a difference.
I mean, you know this as well as anyone. If you're asking the question, like, who should be doing something about this? Someone should be doing something about this. Like, that person is you. Yeah. Like, that's what a couple of these women have said. Like, you're sitting there and you're asking yourself, shouldn't someone be doing something about this? And it's time. We can't just say that anymore. Now we just have to stand up and try to start doing something.
I gave a commencement address yesterday, and the theme of the commencement address was it just takes one, just one person to, rise up and raise their hand and do the hard and scary thing. And my story, I was waiting, like, where's it? That no one else was coming. You are that one person who needs to stand up and do that brave and courageous thing.
And what has been the fallout for you? Has there been, there's been a lot of positive. Have you been dealing with much fallout from some people as you talk about this as sort of an issue of racism and characterizing things in that way? And is that been troublesome for you, or?
So, not as much. The backlash was terrible in the beginning, and the resistance and the pushback, and that subsided. And I've been working on the recovery, but and then COVID happened, right? Mm-hmm. And being a very public figure in Michigan, kind of a trusted physician, the governor asked me to co-chair our vaccine commission to encourage folks to get their vaccine. And that's where I've probably experienced the most kind of backlash of kind of being an activist. And I think it's also a reflection of the time that we're in as well. The criticism that I've gotten, about promoting vaccines, has not just been about the science, but it's been very racist and sexist towards me, which I think we've seen in a lot of public health folks and scientists and other doctors and so many folks who have spoken up about COVID and vaccines and masks and all these different things. So I think that, that has been, there's so many parallels to kind of, the water crisis, but it's been more vile, the backlash, I would say.
Mhm.
And, the level of kind of resistance and the inability to even have conversations with certain sectors. Like, as a pediatrician, we've been given vaccines forever, right? Like, bread and butter, that's what we do. We give vaccines. And, I always have had vaccine hesitant parents, and I want vaccine hesitant parents because I want us to have a conversation. I want to answer their questions. I want to build rapport and build trust and, give them facts and what have you. So that's always been part of, sit down conversations and what it means to be like a pediatrician, especially when it comes to things like vaccines. And now it's almost like it's gone from vaccine hesitance to like resistance. Like, there is nothing you can say to me, nothing you can, do to convince me that I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. And I knew, in my like vaccine spiel, I talk about the science, I talk why it's important, I talk what the vaccine is preventing. And then I also include, and my own kids have gotten these vaccines, like, to hopefully add that layer of trust. And I knew that would be important in the COVID conversation, but I knew when I would be saying it in these current days, people would be like, oh, I don't believe you. Like, did your kids really get it? So on the day that the vaccine was authorized for the 11 to 15 age group, my kids were actually on live TV. So everybody could see the shot going in their arm. Like, they were voluntold, but they wanted to do it. But to kind of, once again, build that level of trust. So, whenever you are in the public space, there's going to be backlash. And that's, and I think what I have learned is I do not take anything personally, and I ground myself in my why. This is like when folks ask me, a lot of young people ask me, like, I want to change, I want to make a difference too. Like, what should I do? And the first thing I tell folks is like, find your passion, find your why. Like, what do you care about? What do you love? Like, what keeps you up at night? Is it the climate crisis, or plastic, or democracy, or voting, or immigration, or women's reproductive health, or gun violence prevention? Find your why. And similar tips are like, find your passion, and then find your peeps, like find your people. Don't reinvent the wheel. There's other folks out there that care about the same thing that you care about. Find your friends. They're out there. And when you work together, it's so much easier, because this is impossible. Your stories in here are rarely about one person. They're like buddies, or somebody got somebody with help. Like, there's always a village. There's always a village that is helping people. So, young people, our millennials, our young people, they care about so much. And you can sometimes see that they bear the burden on their shoulders. And it's important to know that this is not a solitary work. You're profiling all these rebels, but there's always a village. It's always a team.
Find them. Yeah. One thing I do want to mention, the way I initially found out about you was because your book, which is What the Eyes Don't See, was the summer read for my children, my high schoolers, whole high school. And they loved that book. And it's used in a lot of high schools for that purpose, and colleges. So, it's a real account of what it means to be a citizen activist. And so I highly recommend your book. Does anyone have any questions from the audience? John, do you want to see if there's something people want to talk about?
We don't have any questions from the audience at the moment. You do have a chance now, if you have a question for Diana or Dr. Mona, to submit a question in the Q&A. But unless I see one in the next couple of minutes, maybe I can turn it over to both of you for either one last question for each other, or I don't know, whoever wants to take the mic to send us out.
Well, I do want to just give one message about the book, which is so much of what I've been hearing from young people is a huge sense of anxiety about the state of the planet and just the state of their world and what they're living with right now. And so much of what can make one feel better is having a sense of agency about taking action and doing something. And I do believe that the stories in this book, or reading Mona's book, will give you some inspiration that you need, and give that book to a young person right now. Because if they look at all these people who have managed to make something happen and to start addressing some of these massive problems. They're everywhere. We're overwhelmed. Young people particularly are overwhelmed. So I just think that's how we can help our young people, is by helping them find their way into action.
Thank you. I think that's a beautiful place to stop for the evening. You can purchase Girls Who Green the World. There's a link in the chat. You can also purchase, while you're there, What the Eyes Don't See, Dr. Mona's book as well. And if you're watching us on YouTube, there are links to purchase in the description below. Diana Kapp, Dr. Mona, Hanna-Attisha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. So nice to talk to you, Dr. Mona.
Same.
And
thanks, John.
Of course, thank you. Hope to have you in the store in the not too distant future. And to all of our viewers, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you at the next event. Take care. I'll have a great night.
Good night.
Bye.